really like this Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua fight at all. I don't really know why it was sanctioned. I mean, of course I'm going to watch it like everybody else is, but like, let's be real. This is the closest thing to a freak fight we've had in a while in boxing. And I almost think that Tank Davis versus Jake Paul idea that essentially got floated, I don't know if that fight, I think that fight did get sanctioned and approved of, but I think that fight, you know, getting made, that idea being put out there and promoted, made this a little more palatable to people, when I don't necessarily know that it should be palatable to people. I think it's a freak fight. I think that the most likely outcome here is that Jake Paul gets hurt significantly, because, you know, there's not really another option for Anthony Joshua. If Anthony Joshua carries Jake Paul for 8 rounds, then, you know, for shame. That does bad things to his image. The only real thing he can do as Anthony Joshua fighting Jake Paul is knock him out, and knock him out as quickly and as ruthlessly as possible. You just have to hope that the result isn't too violent. And you know, if Anthony Joshua does carry Jake Paul for 8 rounds, you'll definitely hear what you've heard about Jake Paul this whole time, that his fights aren't legit, that his fights are for show. You know, it's definitely going to give some legitimacy to Jake Paul, him getting knocked out, actually, which is kind of crazy. That's not really how we should be thinking about this, is it? Like, that's not really a situation you want to be in as a fighter, where you're going to get knocked out and it's actually going to add legitimacy to, you know, your resume, potentially. But just the fact of this fight happening is going to add something to Jake Paul's resume. So I think from that perspective, it makes sense. But from almost no other perspective, this fight makes sense. I think that Jake Paul is going to get himself injured, if I haven't made that clear already. And the thing that really makes this fight extra, just a non-factor to me, to be honest with you, not only is it, you know, the fact that I don't really think Anthony Joshua has the defense at the highest level to be, you know, an undisputed champion like he wants to. I just don't think that his game is, he just lacks the defense, man. He goes forward too much. He attacks too much. His game is too predicated on power and not predicated enough on defense. It makes him a very entertaining heavyweight. And I think there are plenty of eras of heavyweight boxing where Anthony Joshua could have been an undisputed champion and an all-time great. We're not in one of them, with guys like Daniel Dubois and Usyk to contend with. You know, Anthony Joshua's had a great career, but he isn't that top-level guy, at least in this era. I think maybe if he would have come out in the 2000s, a little bit of a weaker era, he would have had a chance. You know, we saw him beat an older Klitschko, so who knows. But in this era of heavyweight boxing, he's definitely you know, about the strongest gatekeeper that we have in the division, Anthony Joshua. And I think that's maybe part of in Jake Paul's head why he wants to fight him, because Jake Paul thinks he can establish himself in the heavyweight division with a result. I think that if he gets any kind of a result, and it's even a close fight, all you're going to hear is accusations of it being fixed. And, you know, I'll honestly listen to those accusations, because I think that would be ridiculous. I think that, you know, from a pure boxing perspective, my analysis would be that Jake Paul's going to have to run if he wants this fight to get out of the first round. I think the most likely thing is that Jake Paul just throws out a jab to start the fight, and then Anthony Joshua just 1-2s him like Hasim Rahman, like Lennox Lewis knocking out Hasim Rahman, rather. Yeah, it could be brutal, it could be violent, it could be quick. And the truth is, I don't really know how this fight got sanctioned. And most importantly, I don't really think that Jake Paul has the ability to knock out Anthony Joshua, does he? And it's one of the only heavyweight fights I'll probably ever have watched where that's the case, where one guy very obviously has the power to knock the other guy out, and the other guy can't knock him out in return. It's almost like, is this even heavyweight boxing? Like, I feel like the appeal of most heavyweight fights is that the fighters can knock each other out, and that isn't going to be the case in this fight, no matter what Jake Paul says. And I can't really think of an example of a fighter with the style that Jake Paul is going for, the Philly shell, you know, hands down a little bit, head movement. Just, you know, Jake Paul's trying to sort of exemplify the American style of boxing. I don't remember any fighter of that style who's managed to keep Anthony Joshua off of him or stop Anthony Joshua from knocking him out. So those are my very brief thoughts on this fight. I'm probably going to pick Anthony Joshua. I think third round sounds right. I think there's an okay chance that Joshua is just going to have to get his legs underneath him and go, you know, okay, This guy's style is what it is. He's probably going to run like a rabbit, and I'm going to have to catch him. But there's absolutely no way that Jake Paul is going to go, 24 minutes in this fight and not leave a single opening that Anthony Joshua can take advantage of. And I think that ultimately the real mistake here is I definitely subscribe to training mattering, your attitude in training camp mattering. I think from a certain perspective, Jake Paul can maybe bank on himself having a slightly better attitude in training camp than what Anthony Joshua might have. Where Anthony Joshua, in that face-off yesterday, that face-to-face, Joshua made a point of, he's been in the game for 18 years. He's been a fighter for 18 years. For Jake Paul, he's got to just bank on that, Anthony Joshua, for him, it's more of like checking into the office. It's more of just a day at the office for him. I don't necessarily think that that's true, but if Jake Paul wants to cope in that way that he can cope, I think that Anthony Joshua, his just punching his time card in and out every day is working 10 times harder than the average person does. I think you can see that in the way that Anthony Joshua fights, and also in the way that he looks and the way that he's conditioned. He's an elite athlete, and Jake Paul has definitely never fought anybody on the level of athlete that Anthony Joshua is. So I think that there's tons of ways that Jake Paul is in trouble. It's also the 10-ounce gloves. Don't even get me started. But this is a bad idea for Jake Paul, and I half think that Jake Paul is going to pull out, or that, the fight's going to start and they're both going to be in headgear or something. But, I hope that we're not back here talking about a seriously injured Jake Paul. I hope that they found a good ref. I hope that the ref is right there to stop the fight when it needs to be stopped, and that they don't let Jake Paul take too many perfectly timed, precise power shots from Anthony Joshua, because I definitely think that's something that we're going to see in this fight, unfortunately. So yeah, like and subscribe. Hopefully Jake Paul doesn't die. Hopefully Anthony Joshua can do something, can, manage a highlight reel enough finish to boost his stock in the heavyweight division, but not to seriously harm Mr. Jake Paul and put him out, because I would like to see, at this point, facing down the significant injury that he could be facing down in this fight, I would like to see Jake Paul maybe fight a few more accessible, fights against some former MMA champions, some former boxers, what he's built his career up doing, and fewer fights against guys like Anthony Joshua. Because at the end of the day, for AJ, this fight's definitely just about the money. It's definitely just about the paycheck that he got. This is boxing. It is what it is. There's no shame in that from that perspective. But in terms of the heavyweight division, I don't know what this does for AJ. And I don't know what getting knocked out really does for Jake Paul, to be honest with you. I really don't. Getting knocked out by Anthony Joshua is not going to legitimize anything that Jake Paul's been doing. So like and subscribe for more combat sports content. There's going to be a lot of good fights in January. I'm already looking forward to Teofimo versus Shakur. Already thinking about that fight a lot, thinking about making my pick. That's a really hard fight to pick because of the kind of fighter Teofimo is. He's prone to show up on any given day and look like, a world beater. He beat Lomachenko, for God's sake. So he's a very hard fighter to pick, and it's always very hard to pick against Shakur Stevenson. So it's going to take me some more time to pick that fight. But when I have a pick for that fight, I'll 100% have a video for you guys. And yeah, peace out. It's been real.